How you doing, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Wicked New England, your new favorite podcast. Even if it's not, you can tell us it's your favorite. That'd make us feel really good. We'd appreciate it.
Please.
Please, we need love. Okay, on that, just take down the creepiness factor a little bit. We're going to be talking about cryptids today. Joined by my co-hosts.
How you doing?
John.
Anthony.
Hey, he's got a name. Okay, obviously you know who these guys are if you've been watching us, so we shouldn't need an introduction by now, but we're still going to do it anyway for anybody that's new. So, diving right into it. So basically what I tasked everybody with this week was coming up with a different cryptid to talk about. There's so many out there, literally hundreds when you get right down to it. So everybody's picked out a specific one they're going to talk about in depth. And honestly, until then, let's just have a little general conversation about cryptids. So I mean, what are your thoughts on them? You know, do you think there's some truth to them? Do you think they're all BS? Do you think all lore is based in some truth? See, that's kind of my theory.
Where I feel a lot of the lore is based on some truth. These legends had to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
I know in some traditions, as far as like your Native American Indians, different tribes, they all have, some of them different, similar things going on, different names for them. I don't know all the different names of things of that nature going on.
And honestly,
but, I mean,
with so many tribes, there's got to be.
But it had to come from somewhere. Some situations, this is also like a global aspect as well. It's coming from different nations, different cultures. Everybody's got everybody has a similar aspect that's going on, but it's definitely under a different name, or there's similarities to the aspect, but differences in many other aspects. So I mean, but in complete honesty, they had to come from somewhere.
True. And obviously Anthony just touched base on Native American beliefs too, and obviously that's some of the cryptids. But I mean, there's also cryptids, you know, a weird animal that maybe nobody could describe, and now it's got a legend of its own or something like that.
Well, even, I mean, when you look at, say, the giant squid, where do you think the story of the Kraken came from? Probably from giant squids, or something of that nature. I mean...
Do you know what the scientific term is for a giant squid, John?
What?
Architeuthis ducks.
Architeuthis ducks.
I don't know why I know that, but I know that.
You know what, though? That's a fun
facts.
fact that you can pull out anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, but... I don't know, I feel like a lot of myths and cryptids come from misunderstanding the environment around them, right? So, even like if we take Bigfoot, we know Gigantopithecus used to exist, it's just extinct. Maybe it's an extinct animal. Maybe some of these cryptids might just be animals that are extinct by now, you know?
And actually, while you're on Bigfoot, before we step off of that, I really do want to touch base on this. You know, how many Bigfoots were there? Was there really only one Bigfoot? Are they a species? Because, I mean, literally almost every state, at least, has their own Bigfoot type legend. So there can't be just these only Bigfoots exist in, like, Minnesota. Well, the guys over here in Maine say they got a Bigfoot, and the guys over here in Idaho, or et cetera, et cetera. So is it a species that's maybe forgotten, and maybe there just wasn't a lot of them? Or maybe is it something completely simple that we're not even thinking about, you know, and it's not even a mythical beast or anything like that? So,
see, I always took it as a species. Whenever I was watching Finding Bigfoot back in the day, I always took it as, oh, it's a species of Sasquatch. And then Bobo just took over the show, you know?
Or, if you want to go back to Hollywood, Harry and the Hendersons.
Great movies. If you guys have never seen those, especially younger generation, maybe you might not even know what those are. But great comedic family movies. Basically, they adopt a Yeti or a Bigfoot. He actually sort of becomes part of the family. So it's pretty lighthearted stuff. It's really funny. Good for all ages. It's a great movie.
If it ever goes free on Amazon or, you know, whatever other streaming platforms you watch, it's worth the watch.
Yeah. In the meantime, you'll probably find it in any of your bargain bins or $5 dump bins at Walmart, because that's usually where the movie gets sent to. So yeah, moving into the main topic of our show, though, the specific cryptids. I mean, who wants to kick it off tonight and start talking first? Is anybody really excited about talking about their cryptid, or are you guys kind of hanging back?
Well, I mean, maybe we could start off by telling, who we all researched. Sorry.
Can you speak English? That's impossible.
It's been a long day for the three of us, guys.
Just a little bit. I researched Mothman. I thought that was pretty cool.
You didn't wear the shirt.
I know. It's in the wash right now.
So when we went to the Oddities and Curiosities Expo, he actually picked up a Mothman t-shirt. So I expected him to wear it for the show. Clearly that didn't happen. He didn't get the memo. Inter-office memos are always getting lost. People don't check their email.
Yeah, it goes right to the special filing cabinet for corporate documents.
Special folder. I think it's labeled spam. I could be wrong. Anyway, so the cryptid I actually went ahead and researched was the Wendigo or Wendigo, depending on how you pronounce it. We'll get into specifics about it in a little bit after we get there, but it's just something I've always been kind of fascinated with. Obviously, your mind gets warped by television and fictionalized characters and things like that, but there is a real legend behind it, and that was something fascinating for me to be able to look at.
I was actually going to do mine on Skinwalkers. I know this information, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long day. I was going to do Skinwalkers. A lot of my research I was doing was basically online, Google information. I think that's basically where most people get their information. And then I said, hell with it. I'm going to look up YouTube, see what pops up.
Google and YouTube University, folks.
Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, especially with stuff like paranormal and whatnot, there's a lot of misreferencing, I think, more towards Google. And if you can find the right channels on YouTube, you can actually get more detailed information. One of the things that I found very interesting was that it was more focused regarding the Navajo people around Arizona, Nevada, I believe parts of Colorado, Utah, New Mexico. And they outright described it as anytime that somebody's talking about skinwalkers, they're getting the story wrong. They're getting the direct information that they get from a Google search. And I ended up changing mine over to something else, mainly also because of an experience that I kind of sort of had, and that would be shadow people. So it's going to be an interesting conversation nonetheless.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe it's for the best that we didn't actually move forward with the Skinwalkers, Anthony, because that actually just gave me a great idea for an episode. And that's honestly Skinwalkers versus werewolves versus shapeshifters. You know what I mean?
That would be really cool.
All three of those have some pretty tight similarities, so I think that would be really cool to just take.
And that was
solid
something else
episode.
that I saw in one of the YouTube videos. Maybe during that episode we might be able to drop a couple of different channels on YouTube of where we got some of our information, because something tells me we might be looking more at YouTube research than the standard Google.
And if you guys want to see that, drop a comment just letting us know that that's something that you'd be interested in.
Yep. All right. So, John, why don't you get away? Because I actually want to hear about Mothman, so I'm interested in what you found out.
So, Mothman, not a New England legend. However, most of the sightings occurred in and around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, specifically from late 1966 through 1967. So, the first reported sighting was from gravediggers. And let me see what they had said. They said that they saw supposedly a dark human being-like creature jumping between trees. So,
Interesting.
they're in this grave site, middle of the night, and all they see is a human-like creature jumping from tree to tree.
Now, were they grave diggers or grave robbers?
Grave diggers, as far as I know. That's
Makes
what
you
I
wonder.
saw. Granted, what are they doing out there so late? Makes you think.
Cooler time to dig. That's what I think.
Probably, but still makes you think. 3 days later, two couples saw a 7-foot tall winged creature with red eyes standing in front of the car that they were in. From there, we're just going to start referring to him as Mothman. Mothman chased them to the outskirts of town, then retreated to a nearby field. So that's already 2 sightings of this creature, of a creature, within 3 days of each other. Now, the thing about the couples, from what I could gather, they were 2 couples that were maybe on a double date or something. They were together, and they happened to see Mothman. And that's why one of the witnesses said that he knew he wasn't crazy because he had other people there to see this creature.
Unless all of them were on psychotropic drugs, then...
That would be a pretty big cause of concern, especially since they were driving. Don't drive on drugs.
It was the 60s, though, so...
Maybe. I mean, November of 1966 is when this all occurred. So, crazy times, right? Now, thing to note, 8 more sightings followed in the coming 3 days. So now we're already up to 10 sightings within 6 days, within a week.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of sightings of Mothman. So now, December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Ohio, collapsed, killing 46 people, which some blame on Mothman, because there were a bunch of recorded reports of seeing Mothman in the year leading up to the bridge collapsing. So from there, people started blaming it on Mothman, as well as saying Mothman was trying to warn us. One of the reasons for that collapse, just as an FYI from an engineering perspective, the way they designed it, number one, it was made for lighter cars, because at the time of construction, cars weighed around 1,000 pounds.
When was that bridge built?
I want to say 30s.
We're talking like Model Ts and
Yeah, we're talking
definitely light vehicles.
Light vehicles. At the time of the collapse, the average car weight was somewhere around 4,000 pounds.
Yeah, and that's not including big heavy-duty trucks, semi-trucks, transporting goods.
Exactly.
Weights had definitely gone higher since then.
Now, also, if you look at the designs, the way it was designed, there weren't many fail-safes. So if one piece fails, the whole thing is going to fail. There's nothing to protect the next part, the next part, the next part.
See, the problem is there's a problem with your rector set. So you put the wrong connector to the Y bone, and so therefore the whole thing just kind of went over.
Terrible. Terrible by today's standards. Respectfully, I'm sure the original designer is not around anymore, so
it's okay to slam him and...
Well,
yeah,
I'm sure also if you're looking at those aspects that they didn't think anything of like future, how heavy vehicles are going to be coming or anything like that. So I'm not going to blame a designer for a small little technicality that they might have missed. Unfortunately, we see that even currently. Even today, we see the designs and
industry,
things fail.
Especially in automotive, like just exploded. I mean, after the invention of the first automobile, and I don't think they ever could have imagined it would have gone as fast as it did. I mean,
and it just so happened they had a crazy amount of traffic that day, so now you have all of that weight just sitting there when the bridge wasn't really designed to withstand that weight. So was it Mothman? Maybe, maybe not. Now, thinking about this from a skeptic's point of view, some believe that these sightings were actually a local bird called the sandhill crane. So that was one of the theories, that it could have been the sandhill crane, and the reason being is because it's very tall and it has red around the eyes. Now, me personally,
7 feet tall. I mean,
I don't think
I've never seen personally a 7-foot bird, even in like an aviary or a zoo.
I think that's where that's a little bit hard to believe that it could be the sandhill crane. Another one that is a little bit more believable is that it could have been a prankster. It could have been, some guy dressing up and scaring people in the woods. Could have been, but you also have to think, if they're in a costume, how easy is it going to be to jump from tree to tree? How easy is it going to be to run after a car or fly after a car, unless you have some kind of weird engineering that we just don't have.
Batman didn't have his gadgets yet.
Right. This guy was apparently Batman. Sorry, guys, debunked. Batman was in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The last one is that it's all the locals' imaginations. It was a dream the whole time.
I think that's the cop-out for anybody who can't solve the mystery and wants it to go away.
That's exactly what it sounds like to me, because we're going to say the entire town saw the same Benadryl fever dream. I mean, maybe, but I think Prankster is the most likely if we're going to go off of these.
Hey, if it was New England, they probably would have called them the witch.
That's a good point. Wicked New England. Today, Point Pleasant actually hosts an annual Mothman festival. There's a statue in Point Pleasant for Mothman, and there's also a museum.
How far is the drive to Point Pleasant?
Too long for tonight, that's for sure.
Well, not tonight.
Since the 1960s, there have been a few reports, but overall, before the bridge collapsed is when most of the reports came in of seeing Mothman.
No, that's all really interesting, actually. And honestly, the first time I ever heard about Mothman, just to kind of give you folks a reference, would be the movie, which came out, which I actually knew about the movie before I knew about the legend. So that's why I was glad to hear some more about it. But worth checking out, for sure. Mothman Prophecies, great movie, Richard Gere. It's got some pretty good actors in there, too. Some other ones. Worth checking out 100%. It actually follows a lot of what you were saying, only it's from like a more like mid-90s perspective, like it would have happened in like the mid-90s instead of the 60s. Okay. But still great movie. It's lesser seen these days.
And fun story, so not really story, fun fact, that movie is actually based on a book that was written, I want to say 20 years prior to the movie coming out, maybe 10 years prior.
Most good movies usually come from a book at some point down the line, so... Alright, so I'm going to let Anthony go last today and close things out, because I think he's got a lot to say. And I actually don't have as much research, unfortunately, as probably either of these guys prepared this week. But, so mine's on the Wendigo. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. So, derived from Native American folklore, specifically the Algonquin tribe. So, Algonquin Native Americans or Indians, typically the northeast part of the United States, where they pretty much heralded. Multiple smaller tribes do follow Algonquin traditions as well, that are within the area as far west as Wisconsin, I believe it was, or Illinois. And every single one of them seems to follow the Wendigo lore, if you will. Also, so it was seen as a malevolent creature. Obviously, it's not something you want to encounter in your backyard or anything like that. And almost all of the tales intertwine somewhere with cannibalism. So some of them believe if you resort to cannibalism, you would become one. Other ones believe you could be cursed by like a Wendigo curse, and you're constantly hungry forever and never satiated, and you always have to eat flesh. But almost all of it has to do with excess, greed, gluttony, all of those sins. And there's also more modern representations as well. Usually when you see a Wendigo in television nowadays that's fictionalized, if you will, you're going to see the antlers, you're going to see the stag head, but that wasn't always the way they were portrayed. Typically the portrayal in the past, or the original folklore, if you will, was stretched out skin over like almost like a gaunt, like bare skeleton with just really nasty, decomposing, rotting flesh attached to it. So really gruesome, kind of like a disease almost, like from eating others' human flesh, which actually, backed by a little bit of science there, if you actually consume human flesh, it is shown that causes brain damage. So there is things that can actually happen to you if you try to become a cannibal, so please don't be Hannibal out there. We don't need that. Curse of Wendigo causes the creature, like I said, to never be satiated. And also they hunt their victims and tear into this, like that live flesh, if you will, eating them alive. There's no middle ground. Anybody hungry for dinner yet?
Yeah,
I mean,
starving.
This is giving me an appetite. Let me tell you, your arm is looking pretty tasty. I might have a little bit of Wendigo in me. I don't know. Some lore also suggests they are super predatory humans, and they have heightened senses. They have super strength and hearing, and eyesight as well. And then actually one thing that I found really interesting, because I actually hadn't heard this before, or actually seen it in like TV, if you will, or anything like that, was there's Wendigo lore out there that supports that they psychically attack their victims, giving them visions and like night terrors, and actually making them go out of their minds. And they actually, some people get what they call Wendigo fever, which there's been documented cases of people ripping off their clothes, running into the woods in the middle of like February, or something like that. But obviously, not all of this is backed by fact. Some of these are stories. But there's been many documented cases of this, the Wendigo fever, and then a lot of those people end up either going insane or also resorting to cannibalism as well. So
the Wendigo fever, is that something similar to like cabin fever, when you're stuck inside for a long time? Something potential?
Potentially, but this wouldn't be caught inside. This is like something that comes after like visions and like night terrors and so forth, and almost going insane. Like it's definitely a form of insanity. Which, another scientific fact there, like, I mean, if you get a high enough fever, I mean, people hallucinate. That's just common, right? I mean, any doctor can tell you that. You don't even need to be a doctor. But yeah, they make their victim would go insane, basically, before they would kill them as a form of, kind of teasing their prey while they were hunting them, if you will. And then just, like, one other thing about this, really, is whereas the bulk of these cases originate in, like, more northeastern woods and mountains, typically usually in the north, there's not many tales of Wendigos in like southern states or anything like that. I have seen a couple of them that did pop up in there, but it's not the norm. But almost equal, I would say, or at least we'll say at least 40% of cases is actually the Pacific Northwest, which makes not really the most sense because Algonquin Indians didn't go that far west. So those are completely different tribes that are up in the Pacific Northwest area, unless at some point some of these tribes commingled and maybe shared some same beliefs, or maybe they started as Algonquin and then started their own tribe. I don't know. Couldn't tell you, I wasn't there, but it is fascinating to see how countrywide we end up having these tales, just, even though they say it originates from Algonquin. So, yeah, but that's what I found.
That's definitely really interesting, especially from like the modern adaptations that you see nowadays, to see the history of that lore.
Yeah, I mean the original depictions, from what they described, sounded more like almost what like we would think of as a zombie in a in a horror movie. Just like that rotting, decomposing flesh, eating live flesh. So it's like, brains.
That's really interesting, especially when you think of how many different cultures have their own kind of zombie version. Variation.
And I didn't actually dive in to see if Native Americans have a zombie type creature, but now that's some extra homework I think I'm going to be doing, because now I'm wondering maybe this is their zombie.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. All right, Anthony.
All right. Like I said before, I did shadow people. Now I'm going to give you guys the basic gist of the information that I got online. My research was simple Google search. I believe Wikipedia was the other site that I also used, and then I just listened to some stories through YouTube. Some of the information is kind of interesting and a little bizarre and scary, and who knows, maybe some people watching, or maybe you guys have actually possibly seen a shadow person and never thought anything of it. Now, the shadow people or person are a perception of the shadow as a living humanoid figure. A figure. Yeah, sleep deprivation sucks. Some who believe in the paranormal or supernatural may interpret shadow people as a presence of a spirit or entity. Now, the reports can include harassing someone in their bedroom, are of a large dark shadow that looms between people in a room, also called and associated with the Hat Man, which is more of a famous urban legend, if anything else. He usually appears and wears a dark coat and a hat. naturally, and it's also been considered the devil. Now, one example as far as the Hat Man goes, it's a basic shadow of a human figure that is wearing a fedora or a hat with a brim on it. Hence the name, and it's also associated with sleep deprivation. Or sleep paralysis, I should say. I read that one wrong. Now, there are explanations as far as like the scientific aspect of things, and the scientific aspect is during rapid eye movement sleep, or REM, which I honestly didn't even know was a thing until I printed it up to look at it. Your brain induces muscle atonia, resulting in near complete paralysis of your limbs in order to prevent you from acting out your dreams. Now, I don't know by definition what that means, but it's kind of giving me a little similarities to something else I'm going to touch base on shortly. Yeah. 3 symptoms of the sleep paralysis are considered fear, feel that you are suffocating, and hallucinations. Now, a lot of the stories about shadow people or the Hat Man, basically you're waking up in your room, in your bed, and it almost feels like you're being held, or your chest is being held down. So you're having difficulty breathing, those kind of aspects. Can be unnerving at times, and it's got some interesting roots historically as well. Now, it does go by 3 different names from different cultures, no less. So one of the names is the Raven Mocker, which is an evil witch of Cherokee origin. Now, that I kind of found interesting because, like I said, Indian tribes and a lot of the tribes have different stories and lore. Yeah. So when this popped up as like Cherokee, that kind of threw up a flag in my mind of there's definitely got to be something to the story of shadow people. The Raven Walker seeks those who are sick and dying and devours their hearts. When hunting for the affected, the phantom flies through the air and cries out like a raven, hence the name Raven Mocker. Now, the other name for it, and I'm going to butcher trying to pronounce this, Melusa Cheetah, I believe is the correct pronunciation. I'm definitely wrong on that. Its name meaning big black thing. The creature of Chakatoa, folklore is comparable to the devil in Christianity. It is supposedly eats the souls of people who are plagued with cruel thoughts similar to Satan's pursuit of sinners. If that makes any sense to you, by all means, is there anything you guys want to talk about real quick off the cuff before I get to the last one?
Honestly, just before I forget to bring it up, like, it's interesting that you brought up Hat Man, because in some of the paranormal investigation videos that I've watched at other asylums and prisons, if you will, Hat Man is actually a recurring theme, specifically with certain locations for specific shadow people. Now, it makes me curious, is there one Hat Man, or is this just a common theme among the shadow people?
See, I've always only heard of Hat Man from like sleep paralysis or, like drug use.
Well, the Hat Man is definitely considered part of those, and not just sleep paralysis or drug use. Drug use as far as like anything from methamphetamines, which is the illegal drug, to anything from abuse of Benadryl. So there's certain I do have it in one of the sheets that I wasn't going to actually present. It was just going to come up in conversation, which is what I was hoping for. Thank you, John. But there is a certain ingredient with the medicine where it's primarily used in Benadryl, and if you abuse that drug, you may start having hallucination aspects.
And let's just stop right there. Before we go further, I just want to say we do not condone drug use of any kind, and it is never a
We
good
don't.
idea.
Not even over-the-counter drug use.
100%.
It's one thing.
Use
if you
things
need
as
it.
they are directed, and
Exactly.
only if they are needed.
Drug abuse is not cool.
I'm gonna go 80s. Say no to drugs.
Exactly. The last one I think we might have brought up once before, gin.
Yeah, actually, I think
Which
I
is
touched
basically
base on
from a story from the Middle East.
that. Yeah.
And this is basically jinn are the shape-shifting spirits, and I'm not going to go too much into it. Check out the other podcast.
That would be in the Angels and Demons podcast specifically, and I bring up jinn under Islam in particular. The jinn or genie creatures are judged on their own free will and can be guided by the dark or the light, so you can have both evil and good jinns.
Now, it is quite interesting because there is also a pop culture aspect to shadow people. In 2015, there was a documentary called The Nightmare, where basically they investigated more of the sleep paralysis aspect with interviews of participants partaking in a sleep examination, I guess, or a testing of sleep. And everything else was done from the interviews by actors who reenacted the events. Shadow people have been also in, quite blatantly, shadow people. 2013 horror film. Everything from 2012 with A&E's Intervention series, where that one actually goes through individual was plagued by shadow people and called phase people. Also in a 1985 TV series of Twilight Zone titled The Shadow Man. What I thought was quite interesting was also a 1998 game, which I'm actually going to start investigating this one because I like video games, but I've never heard of this one. And this one was called LSD Dream. I'm not even sure what the pronunciation of that. Either that or I'm getting cross-eyed in my old age. Last one.
Oh, Dream Emulator.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go.
And that was basically a humanoid figure known as the Gray Man, who appears in the dreams, who, if touched, undoes all dream progress and erases saved flashback data. Now, that kind of sounds like it sucks, especially if you're a gamer and you're trying to collect things. So, I kind of think that's an interesting game, but it also sounds just twisted as all hell.
Diabolical right there.
Now, the last one that I saved for last was one that is quite interesting. It is believed that the history of the Shadow Man, or Shadow People, is what Wes Craven based his character, Freddy Krueger, on
Yes.
in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes.
Which is basically, you go to sleep and you die a horrible, miserable death.
That actually came from a newspaper article he read about someone having night terrors and sleep paralysis. If anybody's interested in that, there's a lot of good Nightmare on Elm Street documentaries out there. I know a lot about Freddy, so definitely one of my favorites.
And that's all I really got on that story. Of course, this one kind of touched base with me a little bit because I've had a couple of experiences where I've seen shadows before. And it's definitively of the shape of another human being. And I know there is no way anybody else was there. The other aspect was we were on a job, and that was at the manufacturing facility.
Yeah.
When you guys check out the
Investigation. Video, which so there's one more that's going to drop before you see that one. The next video coming out is Hockomock Swamp, and then that manufacturing facility will actually be the third video in a series, which we'll talk more about that in our next podcast.
And when we were leaving, if you watch the podcast, you're going to see us separate, and you're going to see different aspects of where I go off into investigate my own little area of the facility. That area, that aisleway that I walked down is basically the direction of which I was looking. As I was walking down that aisle, to the right of where it was would be the exit for where we came in and left the building. We were basically wrapping things up. We didn't have any camera equipment out and ready, and we were just basically talking, shooting the proverbial shit basically, as we walked out the door, and something caught my eye, and I literally stared straight down this aisleway, and to the general area of where it was, I would probably say it would be a good couple 100 feet, if not possibly 100 yards. It was definitely on the other end of the plant, and I described it to these guys afterwards when we left. I can tell you these guys were definitely looking at me funny. They knew something was wrong.
To pause you there, just from my point of view, I would say coming into this, like, all of our equipment's packed up. We're leaving for the night. Everything's in my backpack. I'm walking out, and he's staying behind. And he's standing at this crossroads in the facility, if you will. We're on our way to the door. And he's just hyper-focused, looking down this one aisle. And he wouldn't move. And he said he couldn't come yet. And then he just kind of stayed there, focused on that. And like after we were outside, he kind of told us what he thought he might have seen, but he wasn't positive. He had to go dwell on it some more. He didn't actually want to talk about it at first. So
I can tell you that it definitely had a wave of emotion. It felt like I got hit with something, almost like you get hit with like an emotional aspect that is just traumatic. I don't even know where the hell that came from, which kind of startled me a bit. I also didn't know how to quite take it. Now, what was your perspective as far as how you felt of my actions?
Well, at the time, I think I was actually walking out first. I was the closest to the door. I'm talking out of nowhere. We're just paused. No one's walking with me. So I turn around. All I see is Anthony just staring. I'm like, you good? Everything okay? Anthony just staring. So then I'm like, look at Andrew. I'm like, hey, is he good? What's going on here?
Look at John.
You know,
back to me. Back to
and
John.
all of a sudden, all I hear from Anthony, we're leaving. Goodbye. You stay here. We're leaving. Have a good night. You stay.
And we walked right out the door. This one asked me, you want to explain something? I was like, yeah, outside. I waited till we got outside because I couldn't put into words. Like I said, there was a very emotional aspect that hit me, and it just like, I didn't know how to feel at all with everything. But what I kind of did see, I described as a shadow person.
I can tell you that does happen again. I'm going back in with a camcorder.
The best way I could describe it is, do you guys remember the movie Predator?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember when the Predator cloaked himself? That visual of what it looked like?
You know,
that's
like
exactly
almost like a ripple.
Almost kind of like a ripple, almost like he's
hologram.
Almost like a hologram or a water image.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I saw. It actually kind of went from one end, and as it stopped, and I felt like it looked right at me. I initially thought I saw something move, so I looked. I saw something, it continued moving, and this is basically what I saw. And then it stopped right exactly where it was, and it was that hologram kind of aspect where I could see straight through it, but you could tell there was something there. And it looked humanoid in shape, is the best way I could describe it. And then that's kind of where the emotion kind of hit me. I was kind of like just locked, like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. I didn't want to look away. As a matter of fact, I don't even think I blinked the whole time.
Can confirm.
But once it went on its merry way to the other side where it's out of view, that's kind of where I was like, yeah, okay, it's like I said, when we're on a job, if we do come across anything, I'd rather be safe and say, yeah, goodbye. You can stay here, we're going to leave. That's exactly what my reflex action was, to go to and get immediately out the door. So that's basically the story that I got for you. Other than that, anything else? Or
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, in closing too, like encompassing everything we've talked about, like almost every show, horror movie nowadays and stuff like that, you can actually see various examples of these in a fictionalized form. If you're interested in any of those and just want some good entertainment, Supernatural's a great one. They touch base on like every type of thing you could possibly want to see an episode on. Okay, obviously, I'm not saying any of that's based in fact. That's a fictionalized TV show, folks. But definitely good entertainment. Lots of documentaries out there too, though. I'm actually going to check out this Nightmare one that you were talking about because I've never actually seen that, so I wrote that down. So I'll be watching that this week. But you guys have anything else you want to kind of go over quick or no? Or
I think I said my piece on Mothman.
all right, sounds good. All right,
yeah,
folks.
and I just want to go on record. I don't go around seeing things on a regular basis. I'm not on any narcotics in any shape or form. But
we haven't confirmed that yet, folks. So the Wicked New England team company, if you will, we might be implementing DOT physical drug tests to everybody on the team moving forward.
Yeah, no more performance-enhancing drugs.
We hope you liked tonight's episode, and as always, like and subscribe if you enjoy it. And we'll catch you on the next one where we talk about guys who tattoo the name Chad on their arm.
Bye,
Have a good
guys.
one.
Take it easy.